All right, hard yarners. Today we were joined by a fan favourite and regular, probably our most common guests. I think you'd be on the most, apart from Delby. Corey White. But before we talk about what we spoke about today, this episode is brought to you by alltradescover.com.au. And more importantly, we're not going to talk about what they cover, it's who they cover. So they're basically covering anyone now. If you're a small tradie, big construction company, they've got the staff in to do it. They've doubled their staff.
Will they insure Hamas?
I think that might be. Well, look, let's pose the question. I'm sure they can give a competitive quote. They're that good. That's how good they are at All Trades Cover.
We'll insure your tunnels against their strikes today.
If you're constructing some sort of tunnel system, I'm sure they can insure you. But I'm not going to say that officially because I don't want to make it legally binding. Apparently that's not good to do. But All Trades Cover, they're a great crew down there. And I'm going to suggest that they've doubled in size because of their alignment with the podcast. It probably isn't true, but let's just suggest that so we get more money from them next year, John? Yep, cool. All right. Also, this episode is brought to you by Crafted Finance. Crafted Finance is, you actually probably like these guys. Crafted is, he's one of your mates who is a banker. He's, like us, very disillusioned with the banking system, understands the traps and whatnot. So instead of leaving the system, decided, I'm going to help people get the best loans possible, pay the least amount of interest over the term of the loan, and at least present them with the options. He won't just go, right, this is the best way for me to get your business, so I'm going to give you that, and make sure I get the money from it. So
finance bros and podcasters, mate, what could go wrong?
Exactly. So Crafted Finance, get around them, hit up the link in our bio and in our show notes, and hit them up. Just drop our name, say you've come from us, and that really helps us. And he's a big fan of you, actually, Corey. So that's the sort of person that you're dealing with.
Well, mate, when I need to borrow a substantial sum of money that I have no intention of paying back, I'll hit him up.
Yeah. We didn't discuss Warren Treadray and what's going on with him. I messaged him the other day. Anyway, I'll talk to you about that off air. But we were joined by Corey White, and we went pretty deep on the state of the world. Corey, do you recall what we touched on?
No, mate. ChatGPT's fucked my memory, so I don't have any recollection of what was discussed. It's that fucking Ozempic for the mind, ChatGPT. But we covered a few things. There was a wash up from the federal election, obviously the brouhaha in the Middle East.
Yep.
A little bit of commentary around our mate Basil.
Yes.
Aside from that, blowing my own horn. Talked about Branchy going to Hillsong.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I even passed a bit of commentary on what I thought of some of the Aussie hip hop. But
yes, classic. Mate, bloody awesome to have you on as always. Appreciate your time. So without further ado, let's get hard.
Welcome to Hard Yarns Podcast.
I am fucking fat.
Anything Chris White says, please disregard it.
5D is actually a state of being. It's a unity consciousness.
That was Hard Yarns with me, Frankie Rose. So I'm going to throw it over to your co-host,
Daniel Delby.
And Cameron Branch.
I would do this and then I'd gong.
Free in attendance for the millions listening at home. Let's get hard.
Unsurprisingly, you were the most requested person to come on in that episode.
he wouldn't have agreed to it.
That's why I didn't do it.
Yeah. no way he would have done it.
I wanted to establish a bit more of a relationship with him because he's got 4 years.
Yeah, no.
And I think we'll get him on a couple of times. And I am going to push to do one with you on. And I'm also, I think we're now getting to a point where I think we're big enough to now potentially like getting Basil on, and we've got enough pull to potentially get Roger Cook on and those sorts of people in the lead up. I don't think Roger Cook will be the next one. But anyway, and I want you to be part of that as well. So
no worries, mate.
So that's but I think and dipping the toe in lightly.
Yeah, well, give him a false sense of security.
Mate, look, I get that interview for me. I look back on hindsight, and there's times where I could have doubled down and pressed back on a couple of things.
He's just a very skilled media performer, you know.
Yeah, he
and
is.
You know, he's save that for.
Yeah, nah. Well, mate, no, keep going. Like, we'll just, I don't care. We'll just carry on from there. But he is. I think Basil is a bit of a. I think he's good at what he does. He's very good, and I get along with him. He's great, like out of that. But it's there's a couple of things where I was like, I see the politician in you speaking right now.
Yeah,
especially on the mining stuff. I wanted to double down because I said to him, I was like, they're not going to leave. Up the royalties, up the taxes. If they're making $1 billion, if you're a company realistically making $1 billion profit, fucking more a year, and the government goes, well, we're going to tax you an extra 200 million, you're still not walking away from 800 million profit. You're not going to go, well, we're not doing it. You're not going to be happy you have to pay an extra 200 million, but you're not going to walk away. It's just a stupid thought process, and he knows that, and so.
Yeah,
that's where I go.
He said some things that I was just like, oh, mate, that's going to be a great ad for the Labor Party come fucking 2028.
Well, before we get into, because it's pretty heavy climate at the moment, but before we we'll stick locally and we'll talk about that. What were your thoughts on some of the things he said in that interview?
What Baz said?
Basil, yeah.
Oh, yeah, look, mate, he's very good at coming across as reasonable and relatable and relentlessly so.
Yeah.
But for a bloke who sits on the fence as much as he does, he's got very good posture. So
yeah.
I was very flattered to hear him stealing some of my lines.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I thought I'd sit in the chair and steal his looks and his headphones.
Yeah, he said no, I won't wear them. But the thing I did notice was a couple of times him answering questions without answering them. A little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point, Branchy. But what I would say, I mean, that's the redirect, isn't it?
You've done it very well. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, that's it. That's exactly what was happening, and I did notice it at times. I
do that in court all the time when a judge or a magistrate asks me something or points out something. I take your point.
Yes,
right? But what I would say,
yes,
confess and avoid. It's a tactic that he's very good at. And,
yeah.
You know, he controlled the conversation quite well.
And I noticed so there were points in which I'd go, no, he's stonewalling or he's changing the topic, he's deflecting. And then I'd be sitting here going, okay, make sure when he's finished talking, press again. And then it would go in another direction, and which is very clever tactic like him. And then I'd go, I'd flow with the conversation and forget to come back. And then that made me realise, because this was not intentional. This was me getting swept away with things. And then when you see someone like a Rogan interview someone, and then people will complain, he should have pressed on this, and this. And you can see how sometimes you just get carried away in a conversation.
Yeah, and you know, all those things. I mean, it's difficult when you're in the moment, and you always look back on it. It's like a gig. It's like a cross-examination.
Yeah.
You look back, I should have said this. I should have done that.
Correct.
You'll always have that feeling.
It's good lessons, though, I reckon, in the future for how I want to interview. A lot of people gave really good feedback about it, but I think that's just because Basil's very good at what he does.
They were probably all Basil's fans.
Oh, no, they weren't. No. But and I don't think he's got many fans, to be fair. Like,
I don't know, mate. Gina and Chris Ellison and Stokesy are all big fans.
Yeah, but also in regards to that, I didn't touch on certain things that I really wanted to touch on that I just get blown away with, like my immigration and certain things like that, and what their thoughts would be on that. And it's a pretty, especially right now, it's a pretty prominent issue.
Yes, well, I was talking to someone in the aftermath of the federal election who was, in the know, and made the point that the Australian Labor Party and the UK Labor Party are joined at the hip.
Okay.
And
how so? Because I don't know too much about.
Well, going back to the years of Tony Blair, getting the insight from Paul Keating and, being that sort of pro-market neoliberal Labor Party.
Yeah.
But the point he was making is that in the UK, Keir Starmer has set up a trade deal with India and it allows, travel between the two countries, and Indians have access to the NHS without paying a fee.
Yeah.
That's going to cause problems, I would have thought, socially, economically.
Yeah.
But then Roger Cook in the paper a couple of weeks ago saying, well, we need more migration into Western Australia and wanting to be exempt from the Commonwealth's intake limits. And it was like, well, there's a housing crisis on.
That's absurd. That's an interesting
and there's bipartisan consensus on this. I mean, they'll argue about racetracks and shit like that. But
yeah.
what about that?
Real. real things. Because people are afraid to stand in that area, I reckon, because it's considered you're broadly painted as racist if you're against immigration.
Yes, and that was the problem that European politics made. I can remember being at uni and doing a unit called Ethnic Conflict and Multiculturalism, and there were some Swedes who were on uni exchange, and them saying that the immigration issue in Sweden pushed them to the right.
Yeah, okay.
And it was like, they're not bigots. They're not, Sweden was an ethnically homogenous country for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And then their immigration rate skyrocketed, and within 2 generations, they found, the parts of the country were ghettoised and had a lot of social issues.
Well, and
you couldn't talk about it because you were labelled a racist.
Well, this is exactly what happened to Pauline Hanson. I'm not suggesting she's perfect in any way, but I grew up believing she's racist because she was suggesting that we should have a certain policy surrounding immigration. And this issue between multiculturalism and multinationalism, I never even knew the difference, and the whole difference between adopting and integrating into our society, as well as we can still respect their beliefs and their ways of life, but to not just come in and try and, I guess, force their opinions on in our areas. Prime example is and a perfect example is that public schooling now can't even do Christmas carols, for example, and not that I care too much, like, it is what it is, but that's an example of what's happened. Our lives have changed in Australia due to the, I guess, incoming belief systems.
We're being culturally sensitive.
Correct. And that seems to be an area in which you create pockets of division. And that's what we're seeing playing out in the UK, I think. They've had such an increase in immigration, and I don't know what their numbers were. I think we've gone from about 190,000 a year prior to COVID, and then after I think last year or the year before was 530,000 immigrants that year. So that's nearly a triple.
And would you believe that all the property developers and the business council and the vested interests are all for it?
Yeah,
funny that.
So that really concerns me. Why do you think there's an issue with discussing this, with nuanced discussion, and not just saying, you're a racist for bringing this up? It's a genuine concern for, especially a lot of people with their cost of living. It's the money. It's not just bringing these people in and helping. It's our tax money that goes towards helping them.
Well, it's a good point, Branchy. But what I would say is that we really need to cater to the interests of the mining industry and the property council. These things create jobs, and I don't believe that these people are making decisions on any other principle than what is best for the people of Western Australia.
So you, with your rather sarcastic tone, implying that potentially they're getting these people in because they can pay them lower wages and it benefits the bigger corporations?
Well, we live in an oligarchy, mate. I don't want to be that cynical, but Christ.
Yeah. So it's obviously pretty interesting what's going on here, but that sort of brings me to what's going on around the world, I guess. And it's a pretty heavy state of affairs.
Well, mate, when war broke out, my screen time went through the roof. It was a bit like a drone strike on a hospital in that regard, but the footage was just, spectacular. And
it's quite scary, isn't it?
To watch the weapons of mass destruction propaganda get rolled out again, it was like the sequel is worse than the original.
Now, this is interesting because he's been saying, Benjamin Netanyahu, who, I didn't realise this until doing a bit of digging over the last few years. He's got 3 court cases against him, I think. One of them's very serious for bribery and whatnot. And it looks like once he's done as Prime Minister,
he's going to jail.
He'll go to jail, which is very interesting in itself. But he's been spouting these lies, crying wolf, for 30 years. This isn't to suggest that now they're not closer, because I know they're enriching the uranium to 60% now. But as far as I can tell, like, that might be, I think they've given the timeline, they could be a couple of weeks away from that. But no, they're a couple of weeks away.
They've been a couple of weeks away for 30 years.
Yeah. And then so I did even further digging, and that couple of weeks means, a couple of weeks before they can enrich it to 90%, which is, that's what it is. Then they have enough uranium to potentially make one bomb, but then they need a delivery system, which would take them at least 1 to 2 years to develop. And they need the weapon development as well. That'll take 1 to 2 years. So they're 1 to 2 years away from this. This isn't a thing that needs to happen bang right now.
Well, and the other thing is, I mean, I think the Iranians do want a nuclear weapon because it means that you are no longer attackable. It's like North Korea.
Yeah.
And it means the Israelis no longer have dominance in the theater with the weaponry.
Yeah.
And there's parity in weapons capability, and that means you have to come to the negotiating table.
Yes.
And that's what they're desperately trying to avoid.
Yeah.
But, even if the Iranians did get a weapon, I don't think that they would be silly enough to use it because they know they'd get glass back to the Stone Age.
Yeah.
And 4,000 years of Persian history goes with it. But having said that, we live in a world that's not run by rational men anymore. So who knows what the future holds, mate, as long as it's funny. And this digital lockdown in Israel with the footage is ended. I've had to go to the Muslim social media website, Cover Your Facebook, to get the footage.
Oh, fucking hell.
Unbelievable.
Mate, I've actually seen that. They're very heavily censoring or limiting what you're allowed to commentate on within the country, or you could be persecuted and thrown in
Well,
jail.
I mean, the footage being clamped down on is, makes sense because there's, location data in those videos and you can see where the launching systems are and if the Iranians wanted to tweak their targeting, you can understand. But, in terms of a discourse or a discussion, there's more free and open discussion within Israel about this than there is outside of Israel. I mean, you can read Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, and there's a far bigger spectrum of discussion in that newspaper than there is outside of Israel.
And you, as in potentially questioning what's happening.
Absolutely.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. Okay. And I've found something interesting as well. The largest population of Jewish people outside Israel is in Iran. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
I only found that out recently. I was like, this is the Jewish hating nation of the world, and they had the highest.
Well, I think the
population
Iranians would
outside.
say we hate the Zionists,
Yes.
not the Jews.
Well,
but
yeah, okay, so that's a good thing. Maybe a lot of people don't get the difference between a Jewish population and the Zionists. So do you have a good understanding of the
Zionism is the political ideology that's based on Judaism.
Yep.
There's that classic joke from, I can't remember, I think it was a Christian bishop in Palestine. He said, what is Zionism? Well, it's Judaism plus real estate. And it's the political ideology that led to the establishment of the State of Israel. And it came about after the pogroms in Eastern Europe in the late 18th century. And, the idea of a Jewish state or a homeland was born, and Zionism was, I guess, the dominant ideology within Judaism. Judaism is not a monolith. It's not, one unified block. There is different strands of thought within it. But after the Second World War, there was a struggle for the group ideology or control of the group narrative, and that was, an intracommunal conflict between secular Jews and Zionist Jews, and the Zionists emerged victorious in that. But yeah, it's a ideology around the State of Israel and establishing it.
It's very interesting, especially the timing of everything at the moment. Like, just as this narrative seemed to shift almost pretty heavily against Israel within the Gaza situation. And then it seems like I don't know if there's a shift in support. What there is a common call amongst everyone: peace. We don't want war. We don't want fighting. But for me, it just seems a very convenient time for this to all unleash.
Well, I think the Israeli parliament was supposed to vote on Netanyahu's not impeachment, but there was something of that nature.
Yeah.
The day after the strike. So, I mean, look, he's got form when it comes to, delaying judicial proceedings or parliament. He likes to, start a war.
I'm interested in Trump as well. I'm very...
Oh, God, you know what I fucking enjoyed so much is the rusted on MAGA crowd, the Trump and proles being like...
Yeah.
What is he doing? You got duped. You got duped.
Yeah.
The two-party system played the oldest trick in the book, and
feels
you
like
got
that.
sold a lemon. And people are too proud to admit that
Yeah.
they got suckered.
And this is what
Trust in the plan, retards. He's playing 5D chess, and it's going to work out soon.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day because I've obviously, and people who listen would have heard me starting to go, oh, I'm not sure about this. I feel like I got around the Trump bandwagon, well, probably as opposed to Kamala. But then starting to see some things where it was aligning with Israel, and I wasn't happy with that. Anything that's pro-war. I'm pretty against in any way. And he said all the right things. You know, we want to stop war. We want people to stop dying. And it seems like a very big
They will
backflip.
say whatever they need to get elected and then do the one. I mean, I remember the fraud of Barack Obama.
Yeah.
In the aftermath of, the disastrous war in Iraq and the war on terror years and then the global financial crisis, and then had this epic mandate for reform. And instead of the structural changes, he preferred these gestures of rhetoric. And his whole transition team was people who worked at Goldman Sachs. The people who plunged the world economy into crisis was suddenly put in charge of fixing it up. And, that was the moment that the two-party system died in my eyes. But I think it's dangerous because a failure of governance like this, it paves the way for an authoritarian figure to come to power. Because who's going to play that game again after that sort of betrayal of a mandate? And,
Yeah. Is there a thought, and play devil's advocate, do you think there's an idea that he still surrounds himself with people that he trusts and he just listens to them, and there's warmongers still within that group and he's just doing what he's told?
Well, I mean, there's one view. How much of the Epstein footage is in?
Well, look at the backflip of Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. Like, that broke my fucking heart.
I know, because you're a big Dan
I'm
Bongino
a
fan
big
for a long time.
yeah.
And then for the Kash Patel one was quite funny when he was on Rogue. And he was like, we're not going to do that to those women, bro. It's like, what? Who the fuck are you? He just looks like a deer in the headlights.
Blur their face. What the fuck? So that suggests two things to me. One of two things. Either they were fucking plants the whole time and they were just playing a role, or there's three options, I guess. Another one, they get into the position of power, like I think a lot of people would do. What's the old is it Hicks? They take you into the back room and they show you the
footage of the Kennedy assassination from an angle you've never seen.
So something like that, basically. And I wouldn't think they'd threaten you. They'd be threatening your family, your kids, those people you care about. Just maybe, and this is like an optimistic view, this is far bigger than they realise, and then they get in, see why that's happening, why that needs to be kept secret, and then they're like, fuck, okay, we got a backflip. That's an optimistic view.
Yeah, look, I take a bit more of a cynical view.
Take the cynical view. I want to hear
they were
it.
probably plants the whole time.
Yeah?
Absolutely. It's all acting.
It does feel theatre-ish.
And, to see the change in all those conservative influencers and podcasters, they dispense with those principles. They were so anti-woke and free speech, but the moment it was speech they didn't like, they reverted to the conservatives of old. And the discussion that you've seen post the war breaking out, it's got no nuance, it's got no grounding in history, and the way they've carried on, it's like, well, the history of Iran began with the Islamic Revolution in 79. It's like, no. There was a democratically elected leader who was ousted by the CIA because he didn't want to have to share in the proceeds, and they installed an autocrat named the Shah.
Oh, where is that? That's happened. That's never happened. No. That's and the use of the word regime change. Regime change. This was a conspiracy theory, but this is now just when the president of the United States. Look, I have been supportive of him in the past. I know I have, and I've loved the way he's talked. He's been comical in some of the things he's done, and I've actually really liked some of the shit he's done. But again, probably part of
it's entertainment, mate.
Yeah, exactly. But when the president of the United States is tweeting a lot of stuff and the way he's communicating, I'm like, fucking hell, this is getting it's a bit
fascisty.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. It's a bit odd. And then when they're just like, what did he share on Truth Social about Joe Biden saying he's not real, he's a clone? Did you see that? I mean,
but this is the thing about modern totalitarianism, right? It's this relentless assault of lies and misinformation, and you can't. By the time you get your head around the first lie, you've been assaulted with the next lie, and this information overload that we've got in modern societies. The human brain is not wired to take in all this information and process it and critique it and You know, it's a fucking insane time to be alive. The rise of the machines, and you don't even know what's real, what you see on the screen anymore.
Oh, no.
You know,
The AI's getting that good, yeah.
so
It is interesting. I don't even know how much of what we're seeing. Well, I never watch the news, but mum and dad are at home at the moment, so the news is on. And I've watched a couple of things, and sometimes I'm like, fuck, man. Why would you watch this shit? Like, it's just depressing. But what is this? What is true in this? Like, what is true in what we share? Like, I have to question what we share sometimes and go, fuck, have I just spread some lies, or am I wrong? Or which I think is healthy anyway. But yeah, like even I was watching the news the other day. Was it yesterday or the day before? And some ladies picking up rubble in the war, like concrete, with one hand and walking off. And you're like, what is real? Like, is this, or am I looking at that wrong? And this is just insulated. What do you call it? The insulation is like usually just foam based, and it's clad in like heavy paint. So is it just as simple as that? Like, it looks like it's faked, and it's just she's picking up rubble, but it's just insulation or whatever. I never know what to do. I never know what to believe.
yeah, well, that's the unique thing about the age we've just entered. Is you know, the only thing you can trust is what you've seen in interpersonal sense now, and it's got huge problems for, you know, democracy and politics as we know it. But I know what fucking defence I'm running when I'm, you know, going for Parliament, and a video of me surfaces doing something bad.
Yeah.
Deep fake. Deep fake.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, definitely. Is that something you'd consider? Or I know you have considered it. Is that something you think that's going to play out for you?
Yeah, look, it's something I've given a lot of thought to. I got asked to run in the state election, and turn that down. This is a funny story. So after we interviewed Rennick, I get a phone call and, "G'day, mate. Yeah, look, I know it's late notice, but, you know, would you be interested in being a candidate?" And I was like, "Yeah, look, let me have a think about it. But I'm keen, but just need to, you know, have a think about it, take some advice."
Yeah.
Then I saw that Friendly Geordies video that was, you know, smearing him with an association with the, you know, the National Socialist Network, and it was a beat up job that Friendly Geordies was doing in the context of the election.
Yeah. We'll come back to him in a second.
And then I was like, oh, you know, I probably shouldn't. And then I'm walking out of Casuarina prison, right? And the phone rings, and it's Jared. And he's like, "Yeah, g'day, mate. Yeah, look, so listen, one of the girls on my staff has just been going through your Instagram, and look, I know you had some jokes about the vaccine, but there's a few on out there about women, and look, I just can't handle it. The ABC will crucify me." And I said, "Mate, look, I get that," but I was like, "Mate, do you know how fucking insulting it is? Because I just seen the Friendly Geordies video that's accusing you of being sympathetic to the National Socialist Network."
Yeah.
And do you know how fucking insulted I am to be told that my jokes are a bit risque by a man who's accused of having Nazi sympathies? Yeah, look, mate, I appreciate the irony in that. So, can you imagine fucking Herman Goring? I was like, look, Corey, we love your fucking anti-woke content, mate, but look, some of this other stuff.
Oh, fucking hell. That's classic. You do a very good impression of him.
Yeah, thanks, mate. So, look,
what were your thoughts on that interview as well?
Well, you know,
because you were part of that.
It was like evidence in chief when you're trying to control the witness, and very difficult to control. He could talk the leg off a Queen Anne chair. Oh, Jared, nice bloke. But yeah, look, I got the feeling he did the politician thing about questions he didn't want to go into in too much depth, and they sit on the fence and the confess and avoid, acknowledge, and then change direction. But look, I'm all for the politicians going on podcasts and long form conversations a bit more. I think that space of uncontrolled, unpredictable conversation is healthy. Yeah. I mean, it certainly wasn't fucking Kerry O'Brien and Paul Keating. But you know?
Yeah. Well, it's certainly something I want to continue to do. I love the conspiracy stuff, the fun stuff, the like global politics and commentating. That's fun, and I enjoy it, and I get a bit out of it. It's funny. I listen to it, I research it, do the episode, and then I forget. I don't want it part of my life because it takes up quite a lot, I guess. But I do like that as part of this podcast, and I want to do that going forward, and I want to get better myself at interviewing. I want to be like, Don't go in neutral with everyone, even people you strong. If I had Mark McGowan on, who I obviously very sternly am in disagreement with a lot of things.
You fucking better not tell me if you ever get him on, mate, because I'll be
you'll
waiting out the front.
But like, I still want to go into a conversation like that, neutral, like blank canvas. Tell me, but I want to also be educated and know. Right, no, I'm going to press back on these sorts of things. I have to understand. I'm not a people pleaser. If I am doing a conversation like this, press back and don't be afraid to make them a little uncomfortable, which is, I think, my biggest takeaway from the Basil one. And I think really good that I did it now, because it's 2 or 3 years away from an election. And when they're wanting to redo that cycle of podcast runs, I want to get people on like that again. And I want to get people on you like you as well, to help cross-examine those sorts of things. But
can just imagine Basil's staff going, Baz, do you want to do that?
Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting, like, because I don't think you'd come in attacking. I think you'd come in with...
Look, I think Basil is a pretty good bloke. I've had a number of discussions with Baz, and I think, I admire Basil's sense of civic duty. I just think it's a misguided one, because I think, his sense of civic duty is appeasing the top end of town and doing their bidding. But, look, he, as I said, very good at coming across reasonable and relatable. It's funny, I remember doing a gig with Stephen Bradbury. Remember?
The ice skater.
Yeah. And he does this bit. He goes, and at the end of it, the worst thing about my gold medal is that I actually made Basil Zemplis' career.
Was he commentating?
It was 2 a.m. Bruce McAvaney didn't want the call because it was 2 a.m., right? So Baz is there, young and green and keen, and takes the call, and an iconic moment in Australian sport came along, and he called it well. And Steve Bradbury won gold, but he did make Basil's career. So,
I mean, I do see how media can be manipulated against someone like him or anyone. Like that perfect example is that the women's tennis call.
Oh, the hot mic episode.
Yeah, so I get that, and I know Silver Fox pretty well as well from Channel 9, and he said the same thing. So he was like, no, we're just having bants. Like, he was giving me shit about reading the news and not doing the A grade, basically.
And the burning question for me that no one's been able to ask Baz is about this arrangement between Gina Reinhardt and his wife.
Yeah, so
Gina Reinhardt has bought Rossi boots, and this is the thing: all the oligarchs in this country are buying boot companies. So Twiggy's got RM Williams, Gina's got Rossi boots, and that's their way of having influence.
Yeah, but how? What do you mean?
Well, the Liberal backbenchers are wearing RMs and Rossi boots. I don't know if Baz, I think he wears the brothel creepers more than the boots. But so Gina got Basil's wife, Amy, to be the brand ambassador for Rossi boots. It was all over her Instagram.
Oh.
I asked Baz about it. He said it was a 9-month maternity leave contract, and there was nothing untoward about it. Lo and behold, you've seen this decision that he had the deadlock vote on for the zoning of the heritage building in Outram Street that guess who owned? Gina Reinhardt. He doesn't seem to think that there's a problem with it. So if there's no problem with it, Baz, well, how much did she get paid for a 9-month maternity leave contract during the Olympics to be a brand ambassador? Because if it's more than 50 grand, I think that there's some fucking questions to be asked.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I didn't know that. I remember you sort of half brought it up, but I didn't want to misquote it and say it incorrectly. But
I've texted him about it a number of times.
Well, the fact that he's gotten back to you is quite interesting in that regard. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it's that straight away seems very.
But hey, look, no matter how relatable and reasonable someone sounds,
correct.
Never forget the Obama episode and the Trump episode living through.
Yeah.
They will say and do whatever they need to in an election cycle to get elected, and then, hey, now look, you fell for it.
Now, looking at this situation with America officially attacking Iran, that's obviously a very scary thing. But I'm dumb on this topic, so maybe you'd be better to answer it. If they've bombed their nuclear sites, does that mean there's no excuse now for Israel or anyone to escalate any more conflicts? Obviously, Iran can retaliate, which would then probably create more of a conflict. But if there's no way to develop said nuclear weapons, then what's the problem?
Well, look,
Does that end?
I don't think it's about the nuclear weapons. I think that's the cover. I think the main aim of this is that Iran supplies, I think, China with 50% of their oil. So if Iran can be dismembered in a civil war like Syria has been, and the country's, fraught with ethnic conflicts, and it's no longer a functioning state as it was, well, the oil doesn't get exported to the Chinese. And, they're dependent on their seaborne oil. Yeah. And I don't think that the Chinese will allow Iran to fall into that sort of mayhem the way Syria has.
And what Strait of...
the Strait of Hormuz.
They've closed that.
Well, the parliament's voted to do it, but I think the Supreme Ayatollah's fucking council still has the final say in it.
All right.
But, I mean, hold on to your hats, though, because if that happens... well, then the price of oil goes to $300 a barrel.
Yeah.
And Western economies probably start to fall apart. We're not very suited to austerity.
Yeah.
So if they do that, I think the Americans will go all-out war on them. But...
yeah, that's and that looks likely as well. So that again feels like by design. Like you said, I believe that the nuclear thing is a bit of a cover, because I understand the lie that has been told by Benjamin Netanyahu for the last fucking however many years. I think since the 90s, since 1990. I think I got a list of times he said it.
I think there's a part in the Talmud that says it too.
Yeah. So on the what?
In the Talmud.
What's
their religious text?
Okay, cool. And so as far as I'm aware, within Iran there was already quite a lot of division internally between
losing a war against their own young people, because prior to the Islamic Revolution, it was quite a Western place. It was quite liberal. I mean, you've seen a lot of the photos of Iran before the revolution, and it was quite liberal in many ways. And that strand of, I guess, philosophy and culture has lived on despite the Islamic Revolution, and the growing younger demographic. They don't like the Islamic structure of power, but it's like the London Blitz effect. Whenever you start bombing a country, they will rally around whatever power structure's in place. So I mean, who knows what's going to happen, but like I said, as long as it's funny and I've got good access to good content and I can doom scroll, I don't care.
We are very lucky over here. We are far removed from it in Australia, which is obviously but no one wants to see war. No one wants to see people dying especially for what seems to be corporate greed. I'm agreeing. I've seen a little someone say, if you're the one who creates the war or forces us to go, you should have to go fight on the front line. I'm in agreement with that. But I'm interested because Russia backs Iran and so does China. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So the fear here, and now probably he's too preoccupied, Putin's in Ukraine and still doing that area. So I don't know necessarily if he could afford to do it and back them. But China silently just flew in a military aircraft, as far as I was aware, into Iran. Not for any reason, but it's more of a subtle we're here for them. That's where it starts to get scary, when you got China and USA starting to face off if they're backing each other.
Well, I think Iran's the fourth largest deposit of oil in the world.
So this is just the same. This is rinse and repeat.
It really is rinse and repeat. And look, but whether the Chinese, go all in and give the Iranians air defense systems and prop them up, remains to be seen. But
this is the thing. So everyone who supported Trump a lot of people were supporting Trump because he was anti-war. That was a big thing, and now this is happening. We're going to see a big backflip of MAGA people, I think.
Well, I mean, attacking Iran is still America first, depending on who you listen to in the conservative podcast sphere.
Yeah, well, he's got to be very cautious of what he says out loud as well, because Trump said MIGA the other day, make Iran great again. So you want to be very careful and nuanced with how you say that word. You don't want to have a fraudulent
Freudian
slip and say the wrong word there. But yeah, MIGA, make Iran great again.
Truly is an amazing time to be alive.
What's your thoughts then, if with regards to Russia's role in this? Do they get involved, or I don't know? You're just a mere criminal lawyer, but I value your opinion on this sort of thing.
I did read somewhere that Putin was given an assurance that the facilities where the Russians were working, because I think the Russians have signed contracts to build a couple of plants there, and the assurance Putin was given was, not honoured, and there was a place bomb where the Russians were working. I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, nations are not like people they mate for convenience and not love. And I don't think the Russians will want Iran to fall under the Western sphere of influence. But, I mean, they've got their own issue going on with Ukraine. Can they afford, like you say, to fight two wars?
I guess the way it's sort of shaping at the moment is this propaganda that they're trying to build a nuclear bomb, and Iran has been saying, no, we just want the ability to have nuclear energy, but the way they've enriched the uranium has gone far past that. What they want is what they're saying is that they don't want it, but they want the option to have it, is what they're saying. I don't think that. I think they still want it for negotiating
it doesn't make
purposes.
sense that human nature would suddenly change, that they don't want to acquire that sort of capability. You can't blame them.
Yeah.
The Iran-Iraq war, which was, the 80s, that Iraq was a client state of the Americans, and they were given weaponry to go and invade Iran, and it was 8 years. Chemical weapons were involved, and the Iranians endured, and they survived. So, look, that level of struggle and sacrifice is still in their recent memory, and I think there is a strand of the Shia philosophy that has that self-sacrifice for the greater good that the Sunnis don't have. But I'm not an expert on Islam in any way.
No, I was trying to get across the Sunnis and the Shiites, and I don't even know how to pronounce them. So I'm trying to get through that history. The Middle East is complicated, man.
Yes, it is.
Feels
What's funny about the Sunni Arabs is that they don't seem to care for the Palestinians, who are majority Sunni.
Yeah.
And it's the Shias who have flown the flag for the Palestinians who are Sunnis, and the rest of the Arab states are like, wow, we're here on Israel's team.
Yeah, I'm very confused by the whole situation.
Yeah. So what are the Arab states that are with Israel? It's like Morocco, Egypt, Oman, England.
Right. So they've got their own fucking problems, and they're a perfect example of what Australia could potentially face at some point soon. I think there was I seen the story recently of the Pakistani, and this is not in any way to incite racism and saying a certain group of people are like this, but there was I think it was 2 Pakistan migrants were done for raping and part of a rape gang and whatnot, and they tried to deport them, and Pakistan were like, nah, we're not having them. So they're just sort of stuck there, and then they have to, I guess, pay for them in regards to their prison and whatnot. But this is an example of what we're seeing, like when people come over and they bring their culture to it and don't assimilate into the culture.
I'm not sure I'd call it culture.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people come from war-torn shitholes.
Yeah.
And have lived in refugee camps, which are very, raw places to live. And look, these people carry with them the trauma of those experiences, and their minds are shaped by it. And,
yes.
I don't think it's right to call it their culture. I think it's, the conditions they've come from have adversely impacted their minds.
Yeah.
And you see that, I think there was a story in Victoria, Melbourne, a bloke who was out on bail, from Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
He's killed someone.
Yeah.
And you see how the far right delights in these stories. And, it emboldens them because, well, fuck, look, there's some truth to what we're saying.
Yeah.
And this is like good propaganda.
And it's an outlier, isn't it, really? Like, it's not... So and this is where I think nuanced discussion, why people are afraid to have a chat around it.
Well, and this is the other problem with it. All truths that remain silent eventually become poisonous. And if the centre-left doesn't take on that issue and discuss it, then if you abdicate that argument, you place it into the hands of the dangerous. And I think that's what we're going to see in the coming years.
Yeah. Where does that leave Australia in regards to our growing population in migrants? How do we... Because I think it's essential that we help these refugees. I think that's a good thing. But the vetting system seems to be, as far as I'm aware, as far as I've looked into, it's barely there.
Look, I don't know enough about the vetting system, but look, it's a very difficult issue to have discussed in the public sphere without the racism bleeding into it.
Correct. Yeah.
But it's a vexed question. We lived through this in Australia with the boat people issue and the very tough stances that we took on that. It's a very difficult thing to make policy about and strike the right balance with. So look,
is there anyone in politics at the moment you see having that sort of nuance? Without, I guess, is it too hard for someone who's trying to run to fall into the categories of polarization and tribalism?
Yeah, look, I don't think you can run a moderate argument on that and win any votes. But I could be wrong. But traditionally, that argument's always been won by the loudest, nastiest voices in the room.
Yeah. So I don't see a way forward for us. Like Australia's obviously a small role in that, but there's other countries. I don't see a way forward with that. Well, Nigel Farage, he's pretty fucking stern on it. So then that's a perfect example of what you're seeing like that. I guess the far right, like the extreme side of things, and racism does come into that side of things. Doesn't necessarily mean he's racist. He's coming at it from a more of a logical standpoint. Let's stop these sorts of funding and immigration policies that they've got. They're just sort of absurd, almost just letting people in. But at the same time, he's running, it seems, on it's like a Trump-esque style approach. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's funny how the Trump-style politics didn't translate here.
Yeah.
We tried to run it and it bombed.
He half-assed it as well.
He wasn't a change candidate in any way.
No.
It was a poor imitation of the Donald. It was poorly thought through.
Yeah.
And, he got what he deserved, really.
Do you see the Liberal Party changing in that way? No.
Mate, they are determined to go into perpetual irrelevance.
Yeah.
And, it was so funny to see the bloodletting after the fact in the election and, all the senators who are outgoing finally speak candidly. I saw Linda Reynolds going, well, when, we need to attract women to the party. So, but you sued Brittany Higgins for defamation. What fucking woman in their right mind would join the Liberal Party? You'd have to be a historically illiterate moron with some sort of BDSM streak. We'll never understand that.
Yeah. So Friendly Geordies, I seen he pretty heavily align with Labor. Is that what I seen? Was he
very heavily?
So what? I mean, I don't understand. Like, he's quite neutral. I thought and I actually I liked a lot of his stuff in the past. And I mean, I guess I can't. I'm never going to judge someone for having their own political views. That's what they want to do. But I feel like when you're aligning with a major party.
Look, my view on journalism, like comedy, you shouldn't belong to a political tribe. Your power is independence and being apolitical.
Yeah.
Because the moment, for me, if it's comedians, the moment you pick a side or a tribe, you're no longer engaged in art. What you're engaged in is propaganda, masquerading as art. And, I'll be interested to see, because Labor's going to roll out some pretty Orwellian legislation, which was started by the Liberals.
Yeah.
They're going to continue it on. And the litmus test for me is, well, where are you when those questions are being put to the electorate? And where were you when the vaccine debate was at its height?
Yeah. That seems to have had quite a severe backflip. Even just removing the recommendations for children to get it because
no longer recommending it for young men and adults, and the concession that yes, they had high rates of adverse. I mean, this is what I find so funny. They worry about the radicalisation of men on the internet. There's also the Andrew Tates of the world, but it's like, can you imagine if the shoe was on the other foot and it adversely impacted young women?
Oh.
And that the people who spoke out against it were smeared, defamed, and censored. and then they were later found out to be entirely correct. Oh, can you imagine the righteous fucking anger that the feminist class of influencers would be out with?
Yeah.
But, it's just testament to this country what we will take from the elites.
Yeah.
We roll over, we'll just fucking keep taking it. We are apathetic, docile pack of cowards.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying myself as a platform now to try to learn from my mistakes and what I see in others. And I think you would have seen, I've been trying to have people on who I have a differing opinion on. I'm not saying a lot of it, and I just don't know who to listen to. I don't know who to get my information from. I don't know whether to listen to Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Corey White, Friendly Geordies, do my own research. I have no idea where to look. And people are going to podcasts because they know the news is fucked. But in the podcasts, we're victim of propaganda as well. I myself have been a victim of the Trump stuff as well. So, how do we discern? Where do we go?
Look, it's the question of our time for me. And you saw Anthony Albanese say something the other day about, years ago, everyone used to have the same set of facts. Everyone used to be reading from the same newspapers, consuming their information from the same television stations, radio. Now, that's completely changed and it's fragmented. We don't have the same song sheet. Everyone's got their own algorithm. It's feeding you content based on the data that it's got from you. And it makes governance very hard. So, look, I don't know what the future holds, but...
It is interesting because there's a part of me that always goes, I wouldn't want that job. Like, you're right. Like, it does make governance very difficult. And if I always get posed the same question, why don't you run for something, have a position? And in my head, straight away, I'd go, well, if I was to ever do something like that, I don't think, I'm not being self-deprecating, but I don't think I'm across enough of what's going on. I like to question people and I like to ask questions, but I would be of the idea that I would put people in positions like yourself or someone that I trust that knows things and knows the areas that they're meant to help me with and help them guide me make my decisions. I can't help but think that within any government, it doesn't matter what sort of person you are, if I'm to trust the people who I put in those positions, I'm going to do that all in. And if I put the wrong person in, and that's, I feel like what we see quite commonly. I do think sometimes the people at the top get leveraged as well and influenced, but I don't know what I would do. Would you do that, or would you I don't even know how you'd go about that situation.
What you mean in terms of being empowered and being blackmailed?
Yeah, well, just making decisions. Like you just talked about it then. Like governance is quite difficult. If you were to be put into a position like in Parliament or as a senator or something of that power, what would you do? Like, how would you set yourself up?
I'd shut down all the podcasters overnight and put them in jail for misinformation. Fuck.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know.
Would you delegate people to help you in areas that you're less across, or would you just do it all yourself?
Well, you have advisors, but no one can be across everything. Yeah, but you've obviously got to limit the things that your expertise is in, because or if you're a state parliamentarian, if you're the premier, your focus is state issues, not fucking having an opinion on Russia and Ukraine and volunteering your 2 cents on that. You're a state politician, not a fucking federal one.
That's a good point.
So, and I think a lot of the state premiers get carried away with that.
Yeah, I've seen Roger Cook say condemning something.
Stay in your lane, Rog.
Yeah.
Jesus fuck. That bloke's so strange to me.
Yeah.
It's like, how does a Scotch college boy from Claremont...
Is he Scotch college? Yeah.
...end up as the leader of the Labor Party?
Yeah.
I know.
It's pretty interesting.
There's a great tweet years ago about, the Labor Party is the only organisation you can join as a radical socialist and leave as a partner at KPMG.
Yeah. And going on putting people in positions of power, I fully trusted, and I'm interested in your position on them, Tulsi Gabbard. I'm a massive fan of. I've been a massive fan of her for fucking 10 years, as I have been with Robert Kennedy Jr. So what I see so far that Robert Kennedy Jr. is doing is pretty decent. What are your thoughts there, and where he's what he is he shackled in certain
it
ways?
wasn't that long ago that there was talk about him being blackmailed by a certain group, and I mean, I don't know, mate. Is it all theatre? Is this all just, you know? It's The Bold and the Beautiful meets The Sopranos. It's theatre, and I don't know what to believe. Like you say,
It's the Wizard of Oz. You're behind the curtain.
Behind the curtain, but you know, we've seen behind the curtain, and people go, "All right, let's just keep watching the movie." You know, it's bizarre.
And so, that's the concern coming up now. Like, we're walking blindly into what feels like quite heavily censored areas of discussion with the Australian, in Australia specifically. Obviously, we've got the 16-year-old ban. That looks like they've done an 8-month trial I've seen on this, and they said the age assurance, they're not calling it digital ID, the age assurance works, and they were using
Is
AI.
it language beautiful?
Oh my God. So they're using age assurance technology, which is AI. They can read your face and they can get you within 4 to 5 years. There's a balance of using passports, licenses, and all these different things. But you know they're going to get to a point where they just say, well, look, none of this is close enough or accurate enough. We're going to have to start issuing digital IDs, and you cannot have you
can't have a social media account without one.
Correct.
Yeah, look, it's
When does the conspiracy theory about that become fact? Like everything.
Probably in this term of government, I would say.
Well, how vindicated do you feel over the years? Because you've been called a conspiracy theorist. We've been called a conspiracy theorist. I would go as far to say that close to 90% of what we've said over the last few years has been pretty bang on.
Well, I don't like to blow my own horn too much. But I would be the most vindicated comedian in the country by a fucking long way.
Yeah.
But, you know, these things, digital ID and, you know, new laws to combat toxic masculinity and domestic violence, these things are all control under the guise of safety. Protect the children, protect the women, because everyone's on board with that.
Yeah.
But the devil, as always, is in the detail, and, you know, we're being wrapped up into a police state.
I'm very interested to see where toxic masculinity leads the feminist movement when drafting begins during a war.
Well, you know what I loved in the aftermath of the election was the toxic femininity on display.
Oh, fucking
And
Abby Chatfield. And she's had a break from social media because of trolling. Her job is to troll people.
But it was so beautiful because it was other women doing it to her.
Yeah.
And they say, we're the problem. But it's like, hey, like, that was women bullying women. And I didn't have a thing to say about it.
And in the area of the politics, when she was commenting on things and making suggestions, I said, well, look, I'm going to try and get into her DMs. I'm going to comment on her stuff and see if she can have a chat, because this was in the time where I was really trying to push for having conversations with people who oppose. I don't think I could do that with her now. It's just, it's absurd the way she acts. She's quite childish. But the one thing I noticed, you jump in her comment section, and I would be very neutral and very kind in my comments. Basically just trying to get her attention, because she won't see our messages or anything like that. And mate, the hate from her followers you get just from commenting, who the fuck are you and why do you have a microphone, was one of the comments. And it's like, what the who the fuck are you?
Oh, we need to be tolerant and inclusive, Branchy.
Yeah, but this is the thing, like, just because and maybe that's contradictory me almost having a go at her now, but like just because someone's an asshole to you doesn't mean you have to be an asshole back. Like, that doesn't change who you are. Validating people's responses by trying to, like, these people who like screenshot DMs that they get and they put it out there consistently, and they're defending themselves. Oh, I just don't understand the whole defensive thing. And it's almost, if there's nothing wrong, why defend yourself, sort of thing? Unless it's obviously quite demonstrative in what they've sort of been saying. But yeah, I would see that all the time. She would screenshot these messages and put them up, and not her. I've seen other people do this, and I'm like, you're just giving them, energy. That. Yeah, well, I think we've all done it to a point, but
appropriately redacted, of course.
Yeah, exactly. And what I saw her doing was literally putting their names out there, and her fans were going and attacking them, and this is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, look, I'm all for, scrutiny of, the more insidious are the male podcasters and influencers, and what ideas are they spreading to younger men? That's perfectly fine. Let's scrutinise that. But let's scrutinise the shoe on the other foot too.
Yeah.
Because, I've seen some of the content. There's Dexies, it's just this celebration of stupidity and being vacuous. And it's like, Abby isn't entitled to her opinion. But I don't think people should be entitled to an opinion. I think you should take pride in an opinion. And it should be an informed opinion, because opinions are like assholes, right? Everyone's got one.
Yeah.
But, not all should be seen.
Yes, I agree. But celebrating someone's downfall, I think that's very... it's very unattractive.
It's distasteful, but we all do it.
Yeah,
Schadenfreude is a wonderful thing.
I'm guilty celebrating the downfall of Kamala Harris or Joe Biden.
We all, as a nation, came together and celebrated the downfall of the project.
Yeah.
We all came together as a nation and celebrated the downfall of Q&A.
Yeah. Nick Cody actually said, "Now I can come on the yarns."
Nick. You can come on the yarns when I've got work for the grand final doing stand-up from Sportsbet, mate.
But
I'm a Labor voter. I'm taking money from a gambling company. Sorry, Nick.
Yeah. But we do find that we do celebrate sometimes. But what I didn't like recently, and I like some of his opinions on things. Avi Yemeni, I don't know if you follow a lot of his stuff.
Yeah, Avi's working for a foreign government.
Yeah, so he's hit and miss with some of his things.
That's what his missus said.
Yeah. So he's celebrating the attacks, and I think anyone celebrating any sort of war or any bombings is quite distasteful. And that was the final little thing on him. I still want to get him on the podcast and have a great chat with him, because again, I definitely oppose some of the things that he would suggest. But when I say oppose, I'm sort of I want to move back to a bit more to that middle. It's really difficult.
Well, and as Basil said on that last pod, most Australians reside in the sensible centre.
Yeah.
You're not going to win too many arguments at the polar extremes. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that was part of the rejection of Trumpism. Most people are like, Jesus.
Yeah.
That's fucking a circus. We don't want that.
No, and I think the reason you see something like that happen is that left went so far left that they felt like they had to go to that. But you wouldn't have gone there if it wasn't pushed that far. But does that for me almost feels orchestrated by design?
Well,
to make you feel like,
I think the Liberals made themselves as unelectable as possible. And then one view is they did that with the view of, well, we'll give Labor the biggest mandate possible. They'll have 2 terms to redesign the country.
Yeah.
I was thinking the other day, because obviously the war with Iran was going to happen regardless of who won in November.
Yeah.
How funny this would be if it was Kamala.
This is where I had to have some self-reflection, because I said, if you get Biden, you get or Kamala in, you're going to have war with Russia, and I felt vindicated when that started to happen. Even you called it. We're going to see inflation, we're going to see a war and recession, all those sorts of things, and I felt vindicated in that one. And then when this has happened now, if it was the other foot, like you suggest, if it was Kamala, I'd be going, see, told you, so I have to now, and I think everyone who listens and everyone who has their opinions on certain things have to start to go, fuck, we are all being manipulated, and the world is a theatre. The question is, who's writing the play? Who's writing the script?
Well, there was a certain intelligence agency that went on 60 Minutes in the US and said that that's what we are. We're like a production agency. We write the scripts. And I can't believe they even said that on mainstream television. But, that's the dirty secret of all the Western democracies, is that the intelligence agencies run them.
Do you think it's always said that America is Israel's puppet? Do you think that's as simple as it is? Like, broadly speaking? Or do you think there's a lot more to this, like corporate-wise? Or all. all of the above.
Well, I think it's pretty evident that for a very small country in the Middle East, that Israel exerts a disproportionate influence on the foreign policy of the world's most powerful nation. What the depths of entanglement are, I don't know, but it's certainly clear that, you know, they're a very powerful lobby group.
Yeah.
I like to call them the CFMEG.
Fuck.
And everyone knows they're above board. So...
Oh, Chloe warned me you had some good jokes.
I'm in so much fucking trouble if this podcast gets on the internet. Shit, I haven't even started a new job. I might not fucking get to.
Watch me. Well, and this is, I'm going to the UK in a week and a half. I'm severely worried about going.
I'd be clearing your phone.
Yeah, do you think, like, honestly, I should be doing something like
Fucking
that?
oath. Do you see what happened to that Australian bloke in the US last week?
Yeah. Oh, no, what? No? So what happened to him?
He's an Australian writer. He'd been living in the US. He wrote some stories about the campus protests in the US. He was getting back into the country and was effectively detained for a number of hours. Gave up his phone. And they've gone through his phone and found evidence of recreational drug use, and then said, well, you can't come in, put him on a flight back. And, you know, the justification was that you lied on your declaration about, you know, have you used drugs?
Yeah, but it was clearly...
You know, a good reason to conceal a real reason.
So that's the guy who said, my advice is to just not hand over your phone and jump back on the plane and just come back.
I think that was what
Is
he
that the
said,
same
but,
guy? Yeah.
you know, also... just clear your fucking phone, you moron.
Yeah, so, fuck, man, I don't know, because I mean, I don't know if I should give my full itinerary, but I'm not flying into the UK from Australia.
I thought you were going by boat from Normandy.
I probably
Isn't
have a
that what
better
you
chance.
said off air?
Probably have a better chance of getting in, but I am it's a genuine fear because I see what they're doing with their social media stuff over there, and how it's being
People being charged for what they say on social media, it's frightening.
I did see someone in Belgium. It was an MP. It was a Belgian MP he's been sentenced to a year. He's still appealing, so he hasn't gone to jail yet. He's been sentenced to a year in prison for being part of a group chat that had racist, misogynistic, and anti-Semitic memes.
Well, I think most of my friends are fucked.
Yeah, we're all fucked. Like, Jesus. So, but my concern is, like, I'm going on a nice family holiday, going to Formula One. It's going to be fucking awesome. Got Oasis tickets. And I'm like, I'm there. I'm in the UK for 8 days. I just need the 8 days.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you can get insurance for that sort of thing, but that might become an insurance market. Maybe all trades can expand into the visa market.
Yeah.
Are you worried about being denied a visa upon entry to the US or the UK?
Fuck, I should have hit him up for travel insurance. I don't know if Elliot does that, but yeah, so that is a concern, man. It's a real genuine, it shouldn't be, but it's a genuine concern that I've gone, when I'm in the airport, am I going to get held up? Like, what are they going to...
But this is the thing about Palantir. I don't know if you've been across this story.
So we had John Wibber on, who's the Real News updates for Real. I don't know if she's seen. He's from Canada, but he's quite influential. He's been getting tapped. He's just got a thing from Google saying the Department of Homeland Security are requesting information about it, blah, 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 blah. So he's actually quite nervous about this, but he's been very heavily speaking about this Palantir alignment and the funding that he's been getting from the Trump administration. So what's going on there? Because I don't...
Well, Palantir is essentially a technology and surveillance company that was created by a guy called Peter Thiel and Alex Karp. They're both what you would describe as neocons, more so Alex than Peter. Peter is being behind JD Vance. JD Vance is a Peter Thiel surrogate.
Yes.
They got a lot of seed capital from the CIA's venture capital arm, QTEL. And basically it's been created as a data management system for intelligence agencies and governments. So it's sucking up all the data available on the internet. So every song you've listened to on Spotify, every purchase you've made online, everything you've ever liked, all your browsing data, all of that can be synthesized into usable profiles. and prediction models. So who's going to be most likely to go on a lone wolf, I've lost my mind attack, and, you know?
So this
It'll
is...
go, well, fuck, Corey White's been on the hard yarns a number of times. He liked all this content in 2021 and 2022. These are the books that he's bought. These are the songs that he listens to. These are his favourite movies based on that.
So this is is it iRobot? No, what's the movie where they, with Tom Cruise?
Minority Report.
This is Minority Report
Well,
in real
and,
life.
you know, this is the deep state in its new form. It's a technological monster.
To play devil's advocate, you could say, well, we're just doing it to monitor terrorism and blah, 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 blah,
Keep
blah.
you safe.
Yeah, keep you safe. Why don't we believe that they are?
Well, I mean, it's like, how many drinks has Bill Cosby given you? And you've woken up with a sore butthole how many times?
Yeah.
But you just keep going back because, you know, I like the way he pours a drink. I've got no one else to get a drink from. So I'm just going to have to keep making...
Of all the analogies. Yes, you make a valid point. History repeats itself. We can't look back on what we've seen happen over and over again. We've been vindicated too many times with our thoughts on conspiracy theories, vaccine passports, lockdowns, and that's just in the last 3 or 4 years. I guess that's all what can we do from viewers, from commentators? From just general public, like, what can you do? Can you just not buy into it? Can you just close your ears and just focus on yourself? Is that going to do enough?
Well, it's funny this, you know, because a lot of people that I knew and still know and friendly with through the vaccine era, that was where a lot of people have landed now, is that I've just had to unplug and not pay attention anymore. And, you know, it's a vicious feedback loop because on one hand, well, you're happier, your mind's not, you know, thinking about all these really heavy questions all the time. But by checking out, well, then this thing accelerates. So I don't know, mate. I'm hopeful that the second coming of Christ or aliens or a solar event that wipes out all the electronics may save us, but who the fuck knows?
And I see that as probable as anything, really. Like,
well, it's more probable than us rising up and overthrowing our rulers.
This is that fantasy that's thrown out there, like, we will stand up.
No, you fucking won't.
Exactly.
You've been beaten into submission. You are conditioned to just accept whatever slop is handed down. And, you know, we've seen it time and again. Yeah.
Well, this is where, I mean, if you're coming at it from that religious standpoint, Christians think this is, they see it all happening. They're like, no, this is all written. This is how it plays out.
And the digital ID and the mark of the beast.
Yeah.
I mean, these things are in the book of Revelations.
I went to church the other day.
Did ya?
First time in my life.
Did you go Catholic or Anglican?
I don't know what I went, I don't even know.
Where did you go?
I went to, what's it called? Central, Kingdom City Central.
Oh, you went out with the fucking, yeah, I know. What do they call it? Did you think they're a bit Hillsongy?
Yes. Yeah. So I did think they were a bit Hillsongy.
Yeah, I think you need to stay clear of the Van. If you're going to, I mean, look, they're all fraught with their own problems, but the evangelicals,
I did say to my partner, I wish it was a boring one, like just a sermon reading the Bible. I was more interested. I just wanted to see. I'd never been to church. I can't slam church and I can't slam the indoctrination of the church without having never been. I feel like that's quite cynical and quite contradicting. So I wanted to go see it for what it was. I'm not sure that's what I wanted to go see. I'll try different churches and I'll listen. I have my own faith in whatever way I have. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm Christian, but I was just interested. Have you been to church?
I have. Yeah, no. Funny story. I don't think I've ever told anyone this, except for my 20-year high school reunion.
Yeah.
Yeah, before I went back to practice, January, found myself wandering into a Catholic church. And it was funny because the priest had kind of spotted me, and it's just like, well, there's not many people in there.
Yeah.
And it's like, why is a young bloke in here? And after the service, he's kind of had his 2, minions, and he's pointed at me, and they've turned around. I was like, oh, fuck, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I'm not being recruited into some, membership drive.
Yeah.
But, look, my view on religion is this. If it makes you more tolerant, less judgmental, more accepting and understanding and kinder, I've got no problem with it. But the moment it makes you the opposite of any of those things, it's not doing you any service. Yeah. And, I'd much rather a kind Christian than an arrogant atheist. And when I was, young, and yet university days, you've read some Christopher Hitchens, and you go through that militant atheist phase.
Yes.
A friend of mine says that atheism is the adolescent phase of an intellectual life. And I think that there's truth in that. And, I wouldn't say I'm an atheist in any way. I'd say I'm agnostic. I'm sitting on the fence.
Yeah.
Spiritual but not religious,
Yes.
I believe, is the new phraseology.
Yep.
But I think that's a widespread phenomenon. People are returning to some level of traditional belief systems.
Yeah.
And I think that was brought about particularly in the era of the height of the insanity of the woke movement with, there's 72 genders now, and people were retreating to traditionalism for some sort of comfort and going, no, this is how we're grounded.
Well, look, I mean, I didn't hate where I went. It was nice. What I did take from that, because I loved the community, and everyone was quite. What I liked about it was there were people. They offered this opportunity for people to go up and say their own prayers, and then people can pray for them. And I don't.
Did you get your rosary beads?
No, it was quite an introductory sort of thing, like just a friend who had been before or goes to that church said, yeah, I'll take you. And I was like, cool, I'd rather go to somewhere where I know someone.
Careful, Branch, the evangelicals are trying to rope you into them. Oh, he's got a podcast. He might be influential. He can help us spout some conservative Christian philosophy.
And so it was great. I loved the community of it, and I liked the selflessness of what people were going up and praying for those people and on their behalf. Now, what I didn't like the Hillsongy type vibe. I just want to hear what these Bible verses are, and I want to learn, because I was there almost like on a fact-finding mission. Maybe I went there with the wrong intentions, but it was just dipping my toe into it and seeing what it's like. And I don't know if that church is for me or that style of church. And I don't know.
I've seen that one that you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's on the way to Hakea Prison.
Is it? Yeah.
It's a monster.
Yeah. There's a few floating around.
What did you sing? He's got the whole wide world in his hands.
I think
Kumbaya.
No, Hallelujah was, but
Leonard Cohen or Jeff Buckley?
Not Jeff Buckley. And so they did certain songs, and it was very sing along and stuff, and everyone was getting involved. I did my part and listened and took
Did
it.
you take communion?
No, I didn't do anything. So this is the thing. It felt very.
Did you blow the priest?
Then it's not church, is it? But it felt very. I don't want to say plastic, but it felt like a modernized commercial version of what Christianity is, and
it's probably a fucking spot on assessment of what it is.
Yeah, and so it's not what I wanted to experience and learn from and see. So I feel like I still haven't had my proper introduction into what church is, but then I don't know if that's what Christianity is in general now. I don't know, maybe it is, but they live stream across 5, so even their sermon was, or their pastor, he sat in the front, and then they had someone live streaming from, I think, the Cannington church or something like that, and they all did the same one. But
yeah, right.
But yeah, so I don't know.
You might run into Scott Morrison at one of those evangelical churches, mate. Have you seen him? The way he prays, like, it's almost probably, in contravention of the new laws, because he's there like this.
Yeah, it's fun. Well, I am interested in this whole movement towards Christianity and Christ, because I'm not sold on anything. I'm probably where you're at in this.
Well, one thing that concerned me, I noticed this straight away when, there was those initial meetings and community organisations banding together in 2021 about, you know, the mandatory jab thing. And, excuse me, the Christian evangelicals were front and they were ready to go with all their pamphlets and, you know, it concerned me because it's like, well, I've seen what the Christian nationalists are like in the US.
Yeah.
That's a version of Christianity everyone should reject.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was worried that might be the incipient stages of that movement in Australia, but who knows?
Yeah. It's definitely an unknown thing for me. And in the future, I don't know what I do with faith and Christianity and God and all of that. I've found where I am at the moment, and it works, and that's what I like. And
probably more of a Greek Orthodox bloke, mate. You know.
Oh, I think that's Basil.
Well, look, if Basil's been to Eleusis, which I doubt he has.
Yeah. Okay.
But I might have more time for him.
Yeah. He's putting up some Greek Orthodox stuff, but I think from memory. But anyway, yeah. I don't know where I sit with it. I'm very agnostic's probably the best term at this stage. Definitely found something, God, source, universe. People get angry when I call it God, and then people get angry when I call it source or universe, and I'm like, just let me find whatever I find. You know?
And as long as it makes you a better person and, more
correct.
Tolerant and less judgmental and more understanding and kind, I think that's a good thing.
And that was the one thing I did take from that church. Was that tolerance and love for everyone in that community. I did appreciate that. And whatever religion it is, as long as it makes you a more tolerant, kind, compassionate human being, then I think that's all.
But I think the other thing you might have got from it, and tell me if I'm wrong, is a sense of community. I mean, when is the last time you go somewhere and you're in a room full of people you don't know, you never met, and you're all there under the same sort of banner?
Yeah.
I think the comedy club is the only time movie theatre, they're the only spaces people seem to go, or a sporting event. Yeah. And I think
you're 100%. I got a sense of community. I do get that in the comedy scene as well. I loved going to Gone. I haven't been gone for so long. I've been scared off by Shin. If I'm just going to be totally honest, Shin gives me advice, and I think
you shouldn't take advice from him.
I know, but I think it does come from a good place. It actually, if anything, it made me not want to perform for a while. But it was really good to go back there. And you were on that night, I think Wolfie was on that night. People who are Tory, people who I get along with and like socialising with. And I was like, oh, this feels good. I just want to come here on a Thursday night, even if I'm not on. If that's the community, it was good to see you been getting up a lot lately, and I'm glad that's happened, because I know there was the time where you're thinking of completely stepping away.
Yeah,
from
my
comedy.
John Farnham retired. I think it lasted 4 months.
How's that feel though? Where are you at with comedy? What are you thinking about that?
Yeah, look, mate, I did the lounge on the weekend, and don't want to blow my own horn, but it was best on ground.
Good work.
Every night. But look, going back to the law was really good because it made stand up, I guess, just a fun hobby again.
Yeah.
And, I know I can go back to it and be as good as anyone anywhere across the country, and, still got some new jokes that are real good. And, look, I'm enjoying the coexistence of two careers, and, I don't get booked much, but, I need one weekend a month to, fill my boots, so to speak. But I've got some really good footage from the weekend, so
cool.
I don't know if I put it together in a 20-minute special or just sit on it, because I love that club comedy, and I love that sense of people got no idea who you are, and then they go, fuck,
yeah, that's good. I love seeing people succeed. I mean, we talked about it last week. I love seeing McCann doing what he's doing and getting over there, and Amos, and they've been successful, and they've taken risks. Obviously, Amos is under the wings of Jim Jeffries, obviously, but he's taken risks. That's a big move to go over there and do that. McCann, moving I think he's moved his whole family over there.
No, look, they took huge risks to go and do that, and it's paid dividends. But, their success in the US is a savage indictment on the state of the industry here.
Yeah.
And it's that cringe thing about this country where you have to go international to be recognised before we'll say, oh, you're good.
Yeah.
Those guys are great. Those guys were not given an opportunity. And what did we have instead? Well, we've seen what we had, and it was rejected en masse by the Australian public.
It's been cancelled.
Well,
Yeah.
It's the state of affairs in this
Because-
country with art is so sad.
So, and this is the thing. This is a perfect example, like Amos and McCann. McCann specifically, I hadn't seen much of Amos. You'd seen him up close quite a lot. You're good mates. But like McCann, I'd watched a lot of his stuff. And for me, he was one of my favourite comedians in Australia already. I loved his tone, his cadence, the things he talked about. He was fun. Like,
He's very, very unique.
yes, very unique. And I loved that. And he was incredible before he got there. So he's, if anything, like from what I've seen now, he's adopted a bit of a different approach. And he's probably actually not as good as he was. Well, that's just going off what I've seen he's put up on social media and stuff. But that's not saying he's poor now. He's still one of my favourites. But it just shows that example of he was such an incredible comedian without the platform. That's all it took. And that is sad that you can't get an incredible comedian like that.
Well, it
in
took
the
a guy like
mainstream.
Shane Gillis, who'd been cancelled in the US,
Yes.
and overlooked, and came here and
How do you reckon Wolfie's feeling about all that? Mate, I've missed my opportunity.
nothing upset him more than hearing about James's success for a while there. It was so funny. It was like the most hurtful thing. You could have said, mate, your kids are stupid. One's not going to fucking get past 10th grade.
Yeah.
He'd be like, I don't know, man, but fuck McCann.
Mate, McCann's, as far as I'm aware, he's on Rogan next week. So
Yep.
it doesn't have as much bearing as it used to do, but it's still fucking huge.
Go Crow Boys.
Watch him do that. And then Amos, obviously. But there are a lot of good comedians around Australia that just don't get the time that they deserve.
Well, they're both boys from Adelaide, and
Yeah.
they're doing good things abroad. And, I've always said that, those places like Adelaide and Perth and Brizzy, the ones that were starved for opportunity,
Yeah.
they produced a lot of good acts.
Yeah. I did like what you did. 2 weeks ago at Gong, when I think you went on before me or after me. I can't recall. I think it was before me because I was on.
How pissed was I?
Yeah, no, you weren't too pissed. You were fine. I think you'd had
Unlike me on Thursday.
I think you'd only had a beer or so, but it was you went up on the stage. Yeah, it was before me because I was behind the curtain. And you was like, "You're a fucking bunch of miserable cunts, aren't you?" Basically, have a crack at them. But that was
not like something I'd say.
It wasn't just you who was saying that, which was Bruno was saying it. That was the night Bruno won, I think, because he had a bit of a riff and forgot a joke, but it became very funny from forgetting a joke. But no one was doing well. I had to go out with my two best jokes just to start, and they still fell a bit flat. It was not a very nice crowd.
Look,
and I don't like to blame the crowd.
That's the beauty of stand-up, though. I mean, sometimes there are crowds that suck.
Yeah,
it happened on the weekend.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, you get 4 shows in a row that are hot, and then one that just for some reason it's got a high concentration of losers. And
well, do you think sometimes it is is that the responsibility of the MC?
look, it's a difficult thing. It's never going to be perfect all the time.
Yeah.
But there are nights when jokes don't seem to get the crowd going, and you've got to throw that out the window and go crowd work. But not everyone's got that ability to change gears and pivot.
Yeah, I've found that's something I want to work on. But, mate, fucking as always, it's a pleasure to have you on. Is there anything else you want to discuss while you got the platform?
Not really, mate.
I mean, I've got a fucking hectic couple of weeks. We got Chloe on for 2 more episodes, I think, in the next week, because I'm trying to prep for the time away. And then Delby's coming back. Where
is Delby?
He's had surgeries on his ankle. He's not even allowed to leave. He's sort of leg up. Doing fuck all.
What did he do to himself?
Broke his ankle in Bali.
Fuck.
And I'll tell you the details after for insurance purposes.
Well, as long as you got travel insurance, mate, that's the key.
He's got the insurance, but so he's I think from Thursday onwards he can do some episodes, or he can get out of the house. But then
is he in Bali or Australia?
No, he's back in Australia. He had to come back for surgery. He got the surgery. He's off his feet for 10 days, and then he's back. But then he's had to get Brian Shields to fill in for a few things, and that's been a godsend for him, I think. But and then he's got to go over the East Coast. He's got the East Coast tour for, I think, teacher comedy, but he's going to be doing that in a moon boot, and then he's got to go to Edinburgh. So basically, once I leave and he's left, I need all these episodes pre-recorded for at least 3 weeks, and then I might book you in to come in again when I come back, just so I've got someone to come back on. But
Well, make sure I've got something in my schedule that can accommodate.
yeah, well, of course, we've got some good ones. We've got what is it, Big Don's meat? Big Don.
Oh yeah, we both had a blow up with fucking Simon Collins at the West.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's coming on. I got 360 and Pez coming on together.
Fucking hide your codeine. Sorry, 360, but all I'm saying is, mate, if you got addicted to smack instead of codeine, maybe your songs wouldn't have been shit.
Oh fuck! I'll clip that and show that to him. And yeah, man. Oh, do you know who's in town this weekend? And I'm desperately trying to get on.
Who?
Billy Zane.
Who's Billy Zane?
Billy Zane. He is in the Titanic. He's the husband. He's the Phantom.
Yeah, right. He's an actor.
He's an actor. Yeah, Billy
Right.
Zane. And then because they're all here for Comic-Con, I think it is
Comic-Con.
Comic-Con or Comic whatever that thing is.
Yeah, right. Well, that'd be a big conglomeration of gamers and
Yes.
nerds.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
No shade to the nerds.
But I'm trying to just smash out whatever I can in the next. I've got Save the Bees coming on.
Yeah?
That'll be good. Yeah. Again, government overreach.
Wow, that's interesting. I've been following that because, Costa Georgiades, whatever his name is, from ABC is Costa's Gardening.
Oh, really?
There was a bit of a controversy around Save the Bees and him, and he was gagged by the ABC, wasn't allowed to comment on the spraying in Queensland from memory. So that'd be an interesting chat.
Yeah, so I'm very keen to have him on. He's coming. Fingers crossed. We're trying to work out if he's coming to Perth either just prior to me leaving or when I get back. So he's got some sort of business he can do over here and tie it in, work well. So in person's always better, man. Fuck, I've been doing some. What do they call it? We tried Riverside. Instead of Zoom, and it doesn't quite make it any better. It still becomes an interview. So
maybe Palantir will have something in the next few weeks for you, mate.
Mate, anything you want to plug before we finish up?
No. Can't give legal advice for another 2 weeks, but if you do get charged, I'm in the city now, so you don't have to drudge down to Fremantle to see me.
Love it.
So aside from that,
fuck yeah,
be good at it.
All right, thanks for coming on. As always, it's a pleasure.
Adios.
All right.
Thank you.
Hooroo.